think the biggest challenge growing up as a first-generation American is just being an outsider. And it's not necessarily like I view myself as an outsider, but like other people view me as an outsider. Because even to this day, like I still get comments that my accent is very thick and that it's difficult to understand me. And I think they're looking at my face and then making a judgment, but I couldn't tell you otherwise. My name is Jam Wang. I'm 25 now, so right now I am a CNA at Home Health, and I go to school for MLT, which is like medical lab tech at SCC. Being Vietnamese has to affect my upbringing somehow, because there's the fact of like, I know America is very individualistic, like everybody's on their own, that's why you move out at 18, that's why all your achievements are your own. That's not how I view it, because Vietnam is very community-based, so everything that I do reflects upon my parents and my family, and obviously everything they do is for me in that same sense. If I don't do well on school, it's gonna look bad on them between like family and friends and stuff like that, because then it's like, it's reflected that because I didn't do well, my parents weren't good parents, and I don't want them to be shamed for something because I was a bad kid. My parents didn't really have careers when they were in Vietnam. My dad worked in a factory and he packed like little yogurts, and my mom didn't really have a job at all. She went from house to house and she basically cleaned up after people's pigs, because we lived on like the more farm life version of Vietnam. I mean, money was made, just not good money, and clearly not enough where they wanted to stay and raise a family there. So they packed up and they dipped and they came here. And my dad works now in a meatpacking factory, which is a job that my uncle works at. So I'm pretty sure the only reason my dad works there is, one, because it's similar to what he did in Vietnam, and two, because he basically had a reference point. My parents, they live kind of in their own bubble, because they both work in locations that are predominantly filled with other Vietnamese, fresh off the boat type of Vietnamese, just like them, like Vietnamese immigrants who predominantly speak Vietnamese and live a similar lifestyle as them. And when we go shopping, especially growing up, they went to like the ethnic enclaves where they can talk to the cashiers, they can talk to the owners of the family. A lot of their friends are Vietnamese who speak Vietnamese. They kind of just live in their own little shell, which is kind of nice that Lincoln has that opportunity for them, but it definitely probably doesn't help that they have this enclave that they don't really need to leave their little comfort zone. My parents don't complain about anything. They don't tell us of the hardships or any of that, but like, I know they get a lot of help from like our friends and our families who do speak English. I know when they had to call me out of school growing up, my aunt was the one who called in instead of them, because obviously they couldn't do it themselves. I never had that big of an issue with them not being able to do what a parent needs to do. They're good at asking for translators. Like if there are any fluent sentences they know, the one they're gonna know is that I speak Vietnamese and not English. Living with my parents, my siblings, I don't know if that really influences my role in the family. I think that kind of just keeps my role in the family, because nothing's changed. I've literally lived here my entire life with the same people. I'm expected to do the same things that I've always done. I'm the middle child and the oldest girl. If my brother can't interpret, then I'm the one who has to do it. My little brother doesn't do anything. He can complain all he wants. He don't do anything. Anything that like they don't want to do, I get to do. I'm expected to go to every single doctor's visit, especially since that's the career path I went into. I just understand it better. My inspiration for going as a CNA was just because my dad got sick with cancer when I was younger, and he was like in the hospital quite a bit, and he was in the hospital overnight, and his main way of talking to anybody was through a computer because he couldn't speak English, which I think personally is just really sad. So my main goal was to go into health and be that person for those who couldn't talk to their nurses and things like that. COVID hit and career paths just changed because the nursing field is just different now. That's just how life is though. Like I wanted to be a teacher growing up, and then it was high school when I changed to RN. And then now as a college student and adult, it's MLT. So it's always in that field of like helping people. I remember the airport here. So I remember the escalators that take you down, and I remember the escalators that bring you up. And I remember going up and down those stairs that are right between those escalators all the time, like to the point where my parents had to come grab me because I just kept going back up and back down. When we first moved here, we moved in with like my cousins who already live here. And we came here with another set of cousins, with my mom's little sister, her husband, and her two daughters. And so when we first came here, we moved into my cousin's house, and so there was 3 families living underneath one roof. And I don't remember it being crowded. I'm sure it was, because like not all of us had rooms, and they had set up like little tents and stuff in the basement where you're just kind of sectioned off by curtains just for privacy. And I remember going to school for the first time, and that was rough. Like, I spent kindergarten by myself for the most part. And at like recess, I used to sit on the grass and like pick grass strands, and that's what I did at recess. I didn't fit in. I definitely was bullied for being Asian growing up. And I know a lot of those kids grew up and definitely regret those type of choices. And like now as an adult, like I forgive people for having those type of prejudices against other people who just don't look like them, because you're a kid and you don't know any better. Back then, being different was just bad. I mean, I was aware I had a green card too growing up. I've always known. I think that was the first time I ever felt like an alien in my own home, like an outsider. Obviously, I grew up in America, so like me seeing another white person, it's totally normal. Doesn't always work out the same way the other way around. And you kind of get anything and everything underneath the kitchen sink with questions. Like, I've definitely had people tell me that I had to pick one. I can't be both. I'm either Vietnamese or I'm American. I think being treated differently is normalized to me now, because it's my entire life. When I get introduced myself, and then you get the questions of like, why is your name like that? Or why is your name spelled like that? Why is it pronounced like that? When I was getting my driver's license, there was something wrong with my name. I think it was because of like the arrangement of my name. So originally in Vietnamese, my name was, I had 2 first names, a middle name, and then a last name. But that wasn't something they accepted, and so I ended up having to rearrange my name around. So now I have first name, middle name, 2 last names instead, and that was the only way it got accepted. Originally, my first name was Ngọc Trâm, but like Ngọc is a family name, so every female in my family has that Ngọc, and then we only called each other by that second half. So like my mom only ever called me Trâm. That was just my name. So it didn't really affect my day-to-day life. It does affect when I write it down, because then I have to remember which one it is. Because obviously I grew up with the 2, and then suddenly it was just the 1. Honestly, like I think my biggest advice for anybody just meeting anybody is just to treat them like you would your siblings. Everyone's different, but different in the same way. Obviously we grew up in different settings, but like even from you to your neighbor, you're different. You grew up from different parents, you grew up in different traditions. So I think everybody should just respect that, and when you talk to another person, you just talk to them. You're basing it off on the similarities that you have with each other, not the differences. And I think that's probably the easiest way to interact with anybody, even if they're from an entirely different background from you. And I think that would make life so much easier for all of us, honestly.